Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Milwaukee Baseball, where we celebrate our nation's pastime, past, present, and future in the great city of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm your host, Robert Cadera. Well, now, we are only 1 month into the 2025 baseball season, and already manager Pat Murphy has seen fit to call the first closed-door team meeting of the year. Not a good sign. I guess it's understandable. He had every right to do so, for this year's team has already twice done something that last year's divisional champs never did even once, namely lose 4 games in a row. Now, the real question is this: is Murphy beating a dead horse? Or is there something more to be gotten out of this year's roster, given all the pitching injuries that the crew has suffered so far? You might recall that a couple of shows back, I predicted the Brewers would win between 82 and 84 games, and that they'd finish third in the National League Central behind the Reds and the Cubs, who I picked to win the division. Now, I've watched pretty near every game so far, and I'm not about to change that sad prediction. As I record this, the team is 14-15, 3.5 games behind the division-leading Cubs, and 2 games back of the Reds. In fact, the Brewers are closer to last place right now than they are to first. Is there a reasonable hope that they can play better baseball the rest of the way? Well, they do have a positive run differential, having scored 17 more runs than they've allowed so far. That's even better than the Los Angeles Dodgers, believe it or not. The Brewers are tough at home, winning 9 of 13 games so far at American Family Field. But they haven't played well on the road, winning only 5 of 16 games away from home. So, what say we do a deep dive into what's been good so far, what's not, and see if we can find a way through the current melees and towards some greater success in 2025. If you look at the lineup, there have been a few bright spots. Second baseman Bryce Turang is having an all-star caliber season so far. He's hitting .319. He's been moved back to the leadoff spot by manager Murphy, and he's been getting on base, stealing bases, playing excellent defense as always, and scoring almost exactly 1 run per game. You can't ask much more of him. The only question I have about Turang is whether he can continue this level of play all year, or will he see the kind of drop-off we saw in the second half of his 24th season last year. Still, Bryce Turang is definitely not the problem. Big things are expected of second-year phenom Jackson Chourio, and he's gotten off to a fast start, then endured a 2-week slump, and has rallied of late. He's hitting .285, slugging .537, leading the team in homers and runs batted in. There are no signs of any sophomore jinx with Chourio, and it wouldn't surprise me if his second half of 2025 is similar or even better than his second half last year. Then there's Sal Frelick. Sal's hitting .301. Rhys Hoskins has bounced back to hit .296 so far. William Contreras got off to a slow start, but he's raised his average to .245. He's hit in 16 of his last 17 games, so there's no real problem there. Why then do I have a sense of unease about this team's offensive production looking ahead? Well, maybe because the rest of the team has not contributed. The intended third base combo of Vinny Capra and Oliver Dunn face-planted as soon as the season began. At last look, Dunn is now in the minors, and Capra has 3 hits in 41 at-bats playing third base. Caleb Durbin, obtained from the Yankees during the offseason, has been brought up and is at least showing some signs of a pulse, hitting .250 and he's making his hits count. However, center fielder Garrett Mitchell has gone on the injured list yet again, and he was hitting only .206 before he got hurt. One has to start to wonder when, if ever, things are going to start happening for him. He'll be 27 before the season ends and can no longer be considered a prospect of any note, in my opinion. But the biggest disappointment in the lineup has to be shortstop Joey Ortiz, last year's regular third baseman. When Willie Adames left for the Giants and $182 million, the Brewer brass figured Ortiz showed enough last year to hand him the shortstop position. Big mistake so far. Ortiz came into tonight's game hitting, if you can call it that, .179 and slugging .211. The only saving grace here is that the crew's not paying Adames' salary. So far, Willie is having as bad a year as Ortiz, hitting .202 with 1 homer and 3 errors for the Giants. The dilemma for the Brewers now is that they have absolutely no alternative to Ortiz. They don't have any other major league shortstop on their 40-man roster, and their best minor leaguers at that position are still years away. So Ortiz is going to be the shortstop for better or worse. Now, I'm inclined to give a pass to the starting rotation, given the epidemic of injuries that have sent most of the team's top pitchers to the injured list. I give GM Arnold credit for roping in some unexpected help so far. Quinn Priester was pitching well more often than not in his starts. Chad Patrick has literally come out of nowhere and has a 2.45 ERA in his first 5 starts. Veteran free agent Jose Quintana was salvaged from the scrap heap, and he has an incredible 4 wins and 4 starts with an ERA of 1.14. At the top of the rotation, Freddie Peralta, tonight's starter, has been a steady influence with a 2.43 ERA after 5 starts. The other trouble spot, especially of late, is the back end of the bullpen. Closer Trevor McGill has been erratic, and late relief from Brian Hudson to Elvis Peguero has been pretty abysmal. The previously reliable Joel Payamps has been an arsonist with an ERA of 11.7. The relief corps could be righted soon enough, but until the injured starters return to give rotation depth, the innings burden on the bullpen can't help. So, what do we make of this team so far? Well, I'm going to stick with my prediction of a third-place finish unless there's marked improvement during the month of May. This team does not have enough talent or depth to make a sustained charge later on in the season, in my opinion. The Cubs are leading the National League in virtually all offensive categories, and that's no surprise, shouldn't be. After all, they spent the money during the recent off-season. The Brewers did not. And unfortunately, it shows. Next month, we're going to do an update on the Brewers' farm system, where the top prospects are playing and how they're doing. But right now, let's turn back the clock to a time when everything broke the Brewers' way, or so it seemed. I'm talking about the year 1982, the year of Harvey's Wallbangers and the Brewers' last appearance in the World Series against the St. Louis Cardinals. What a year. You know, I've always felt that the 1957 Braves were the greatest team ever to wear Milwaukee across their uniform chest. But after taking a second look, I have to admit that the '82 Brew Crew was not far behind. Join me now in a brief reminiscence, or if you're too young to remember, listen up to the story of a collection of baseball characters that made Milwaukee and all of Wisconsin proud. The 1957 Braves, of course, featured 4 Hall of Famers: Warren Spahn, Henry Aaron, Eddie Matthews, and Red Schoendienst. But did you know that the 1982 Brewers had 5 Hall of Famers on their roster? It's true. Robin Yount and Paul Molitor quickly come to mind. But what about catcher Ted Simmons, closer Raleigh Fingers, late season addition Don Sutton? How many teams can equal that? Well, the answer is not many, and none for the last 60 years. Even dynasties like the Big Red Machine that won 5 National League crowns in 7 years never had more than 3 Hall of Famers on its roster in any given year. The great Orioles teams under Earl Weaver in the 1970s never had more than 3. Some of the great Yankees teams of the early 1960s and the 1990s had 4 Hall of Famers. You want to make some easy money? Ask your friends what was the only team since 1961 to have 5 Hall of Famers on its roster. Few people would answer the 1982 Brewers, but it's true. And what was the last team before the Brewers to have 5 Hall of Famers on its roster? Here's a hint. It was 1961. And no, the answer isn't the Yankees of Mantle and Maris. Believe it or not, it was the 1961 Chicago Cubs. They had Ernie Banks, Richie Ashburn, Billy Williams, Ron Santo, and Lou Brock. And they finished 26 games below 500. Go figure. That's baseball. The 1982 Brewers were a power-laden team indeed. Let's look around the bases. At catcher, they had Hall of Famer Ted Simmons. Ted hit 23 dingers, and he knocked in 97 runs. At first base, Cecil Cooper. Coop hit 32 homers, knocked in 121 ribbies. Second base, Jimmy Gantner hit 295 and played Gold Glove defense. Shortstop, Robin Yount. Robin won the MVP award. He hit 331, scored 129 runs, led the league with 210 hits, 46 doubles, had the best slugging and OPS in the American League. Third base was Paul Molitor. All Paulie did was score 136 runs to lead the league, and he hit 19 homers and stole 41 bases. Left field, Ben Ogilvy didn't get a lot of headlines, but he had 34 round trippers that year, drove in 102 runs. Center fielder Gorman Thomas led the American League in homers with 39 and knocked in 112 runs. Right fielder Charlie Moore was the only below-average hitter in the lineup, and he still hit 254. The designated hitter, they had a platoon between Roy Howell and veteran Don Money, and between them, they hit 20 more homers and drove in 93 runs. Wall bangers indeed. Other little-known facts. The Brewers were Iron Men. They had 5 guys in the lineup who played in 155 or more games. They had 3 players, Cooper, Yount, and Molitor, with more than 200 hits, and 4 players with more than 100 RBIs. Despite that power-laden lineup, the pennant race came down to the last day of the season. The fact is, the 82 Brewers pitching staff was good, but not great. Mike Caldwell and Pete Vukovich topped the rotation, winning 35 games between them, hurling 482 innings. Remember when starting pitchers went more than 5 innings? The bullpen had veteran talent. Jim Slayton was a valuable swingman, winning 10 games and 16 decisions, saving 6 more, and tossing 118 innings. Hall of Famer Raleigh Fingers won 6, saved 29 more, and had a fine 2.6 ERA. If his arm hadn't gone bad at the end of the year, the crew might not have come up short in the series against the Cardinals. Let us not forget right-hander Don Sutton, acquired in a trade at the September 1st deadline. He went 4-1 down the stretch. I think it's fair to say there isn't a team in the majors right now, and I would include the Los Angeles Dodgers, who put a better lineup on the field than the Brewers did in 1982. Of course, in the year after that, Raleigh Fingers stayed hurt, missing the entire '83 season. Gorman Thomas dropped off precipitously, and the Brewers drifted back to the pack. The magic was lost. But for that one shining season, Milwaukee went to its third World Series, and Harvey's wallbangers were the toast of the town. That's it for this month on Milwaukee Baseball. Next time around the bases, I hope to have the interview I promised with a couple of fellow old-timers about semi-pro baseball in Milwaukee in the 1950s and what it was like when the Braves came to town. Thanks for stopping by Milwaukee Baseball. I'm your host, Robert Cadera. I hope to see you soon.